Greetings! I'm doing sort of an addendum to my previous video, which was on the fact that Steam seems to be censoring or banning certain hentai games such as HuniePop, and well, I took the side of the developers, and well, I thought it was hypocritical because it seems to be only directed towards certain games but not all games with, sexual content. And Steam, they didn't make any clear statement why they are doing it and why they are targeting these certain games. But still there is some underlying gnawing at me because I'm not generally pro pornography. It is degenerate and stuff, so I sort of have to justify to myself why I'm taking this position. And well, I sort of explained it in a previous video. That is the inconsistency of Steam and their policy. But now I wanna explore the deeper philosophical or social implications of my defense of these degenerate games. So yeah, first of all, I'm generally speaking pro freedom of expression, and I'm generally against all kinds of censorship. And at least if it's a cartoon, a game, or some cartoon hentai stuff, you can say that it's freedom of expression, it's art in some sense of the word. So in that sense, although I may not like it, but I don't want to ban it. But when it comes to actual porn, it's harmful to the actors participating in the porn. There are supposedly some studies and whatever pointing out that how it is harmful psychologically and possibly also biologically because they get diseases and stuff. So in that sense, I would be all for banning the filming of actual pornography with actual human beings. But that's another story. Like I discussed in the previous video, what's the line between porn and not porn? It's not always very simple. Sometimes it is. So I have this 3 different examples. The first is Final Fantasy VIII, and there's this sort of love story between Squall and Rinoa, and I think they hug in the game. Maybe they kiss once, but it has romantic or sexual overtones. But that's clearly not pornography. But Witcher games, they seem to have sex scenes, as you can see here. If this is from Witcher, I haven't actually played them except the first one a little bit. I read some of the books though, they're pretty good. But anyway, this is well, is this pornography? And I argued in the previous video that this game isn't even if it has these pornographic scenes, it's not only about pornography. It's an adventure game or role-playing adventure with various aspects to it, and this romance is just one of them. And then there's games like HuniePop, which it has decent gaming mechanics, but some visual novel games, their only purpose is basically to seduce girls and have sex with them and stuff. So that would go to the porn category. But the line between games like Witcher or whatever, or GTA and some actual porn games is not so clear. But clearly there is some issues are black and white, but there are gray areas, and sometimes it's not easy to differentiate between them, but sometimes it is easy to differentiate between them. So it might be an easy task to say that all porn that you can clearly define as porn is bad and it should be banned or something. But then again, if you really want to be, at least for me, if I want to be intellectually honest and consistent, then I have to why would I want to ban porn? And because it's degenerate and stuff. So then am I saying that Witcher or Final Fantasy, they're not degenerate? Because you could say that all entertainment is degenerate in some manner, even though it's not as blatantly as porn or something like that. Is watching Star Wars, the original good movies, is that degenerate? Or playing Final Fantasy or any game, or listening to rock music, is that not degenerate actually? because degenerate basically just means morally corrupt. But okay, it's not like completely corrupt if you enjoy it, but it is sort of corrupting. It is degenerating you in some manner if you really want to stand as the example of uprightness and righteousness. Any kind of culture or entertainment, it is in some sense, I would say, it is a bit degenerate. And of course there's the difference that some pieces of entertainment are deliberately and blatantly degenerate, and some of them aren't, at least deliberately, and even, or they might be deliberately, but they're not blatantly degenerate, like such as the original Ghostbusters movie versus the remake with the feminists and the, feminist propaganda. Although I haven't even seen the new one, so maybe I'm completely wrong and talking out of my ass and it's the most red-pilled movie out there, but somehow I doubt it. Just seeing some clips and comments from the people promoting it. So yeah, I would say that, you can see if you juxtapose the original Ghostbusters, which was like this fairly superficial but interesting adventure comedy thingy, and then the new Ghostbusters, which seems to be just all sorts of this, SJW liberal feminist propaganda crap. So there's like, you can see that one is more degenerate than the other, but still the original, you could say that the original was already degenerate. It's just providing you an avenue for escapism instead of, doing something in the real world to better the world or yourself or whatever. You are simply, sitting on your ass for a couple of hours and having a laugh. Because when I think about it, like basically all culture is degenerate in some way. There's simply different degrees of it. But like, how about like, classical Greek statues or like paintings with really, Renaissance era paintings or whatever. Like when you compare them to like movies and video games, like can you really equate them? Because there is at least like one difference I can spot easily, is that the latter, the movies and games, they promote escapism. Like they give you this alternative reality you can escape to for a while to get your fix, so you don't have to deal with the shitness of reality. Whereas paintings or statues or sculptures or whatever, you can look at them and they can be always like, if there's some beautiful sculpture in the city center or the marketplace where you live or whatever, it's always there, like, it somehow can affect you positively or negatively, but you don't usually just sit on your ass for 2 hours looking at it and, tuning out from reality. Like you could argue that the classical kind of art, it promotes uplifting yourself because you don't immerse yourself in inaction for hours as you do with games and movies and stuff, or watching YouTube or whatever. Or like, is reading books also degenerate, like reading fictional books like Tolkien or something? Is it degenerate? You're just engaging in some kind of fantasy as well, like even if it's not a clear fantasy book like Tolkien, but whatever modern crap. Because like, should all the books you read be some useful stuff that really teach you something, like books on farming or shipbuilding? Like they give you practical skills to make you somehow better in the real world. Are those the only kinds of books that are not degenerate? Or like, if you read the Bible or something, well, a Christian would of course say that no, that's basically the only book you should read. But like, if you're not a Christian, like, would you call the Bible or any other holy book degenerate? Because like, from a non-believer standpoint, then you could say that those books promote escapism. And this is sort of like a pointless argument, because it ultimately comes down to your values. Like, are you a Christian, a liberal, a national socialist, a communist, or whatever? So I guess that should be the standpoint that you come from. And like, when we come back to the HuniePop and other hentai games getting censored on Steam, what is the value system that Steam is promoting. And I saw some comment on one comment on the internet saying that it's like, they become like conservative Christians or something. That sounds hilarious. I cannot imagine Steam censoring stuff because of Christian values, so it's probably because of liberal values or modern liberal or whatever you want to call them, because being inconsistent is especially applicable to them. Not to say that other belief systems cannot be inconsistent, but especially modern liberalism is all about being inconsistent in what you stand for. So Steam really should explain their reasoning. Why are they doing it? Like, what is the value system, the ideology, whatever behind their censorship? If they were to explain it, I might disagree with the value system, but I might agree with their explanation, because if they're at least consistent with their value system, then it's understandable. Right now it's not. But yeah, like when you really think about it, like, because basically everything is degenerate, like, drinking alcohol, smoking tobacco, that's certainly degenerate. But when you look at it, babe, there's a positive side to those, like they can promote friendship, playing games together. It can promote friendship, and generally speaking, I think friendship is a good thing, not a degenerate thing, unless you have like really degenerate friends. So like pretty much is fun degenerate? I guess that's what I'm thinking. And in some way I would say yes, but on the other, that's just what humans do, and I like the only solution I can think of is to have, moderation. Like you can have a little bit of fun, a little bit of degenerate behavior, but as long as you don't go too far, then it's acceptable. Maybe it's not ideal, but the fact is that we are all flawed and sinful human beings. We are not the pure paladins for Christ or avatars for Hitler's will or incarnation of Marxist principles or prophets of Loki or whatever your value system is. We are all degenerate. And of course, communists, especially nowadays, they promote degeneracy, so this might not be applicable, but probably back in the day when, in the 50s or whatever, even communists weren't promoting like degenerate behavior because they wanted, good workers and good soldiers to die for their ideology. So at least like the old style communism probably had some redeeming qualities compared to today's commie, Antifa, whatever. I don't know, were there a lot of literal cucking in the Soviet Union or East Germany, or like was it promoted by the media like nowadays? But yeah, anyway, since we are not these pure beings of enforcers of the ideology or religion or value system we adhere to, I think, because I have my degenerate practices, playing games and drinking alcohol and whatever. I think it's somehow like a little bit of escapism, a little bit of fun and enjoyment. It keeps you from falling off the deep end, like you don't go too crazy, but like if you go too far, like if you spend your Christmas alone playing tranny hentai games with demon girls or whatever, yeah, I would say that's going too far. And once again, it's somewhat subjective what is too far and what is not, and there's gray areas, but still the line exists somewhere out there, like what is too far and what is not. But yeah, I do think it feels like a cop-out to say that, yeah, in moderation we can be degenerate, because it is just basically an admission of weakness, that, I'm weak, and I know that most people out there are weak. We all have our sins and our flaws, and as long as we don't let them take over, we can manage it. And maybe all of this is just a pointless autistic argument and it doesn't really matter to anyone else, but I don't know, at least it mattered to me. Like, it's not the first time I've wondered about it, but I guess after my previous video on HuniePop, it sort of forced me to tackle it more, and I still don't have like a clear answer, and I can accept the uncertainty and the fact that life as a human being is not just like a, some mathematical equation. We are not pure creatures of logic, and we shouldn't be. And of course, like, if you want to think about the positive sides of, like, sorts of degenerate games or entertainment, although, like, yes, they do make you often passive, but sometimes they do, like, give you new ideas that helps you look at things from a different perspective that can be useful, and in the long run it can benefit you, like, for changing your life for the better. But still, it is somewhat degenerate. Like, movies, games, music, whatever you got, it's somehow it's escapist entertainment, and for me at least, it just makes sense to admit it, but also to accept it.